Okay, it's different when I'm the one presenting. Okay, wait, go back. Oh, no, okay, there we go. Okay, we're good. All right. Hello. We're going to be doing the presentation Belenos, Belenus, and Belenos, a reconstructive and revivalist approach by Belenos Belinos. So there's going to be a lot of different spellings and stuff like that. So I'm going to try to remember to phonetically read out the spellings because sometimes it can get a little bit confusing and it makes a lot more sense in text form. So I'm going to try to help it make more sense in written form. So this inscription right here is Quartus Beleno Pro Se Jesus, and it's my favorite inscription. It's found in Bouches-du-Rhône, in which this Quartus dedicates the altar to Beleno and on behalf of his friends and family. I'm particularly endeared to it because it suggests that this deity is a light to be shared with all you hold dear. All right. Oh, okay. So hello, I am Belenos Belinos, as I said before, a name of both historical and constructive Gallo-Brythonic significance, which translates to Hound of Belenos, first name, and from the birch, last name. Belenos historically is also the name of a Brythonic king, which we'll get into later on. And just a note, I was initiated into tutelation under this name in early 2016. Unsurprisingly, Belenos drew me to Gaulish polytheism. I've done a good deal of contemplation and research on him, writing Belenos 101 paper back in April 2016, also when I was much younger, and the majority of my presence was on Tumblr on the Hound of Bel blog. Since then, I've grown as a person and as a Gaulish polytheist, and while my understanding of Belenos has not changed, it has certainly grown. Next slide. All right, so the name Belenus translates to the shining one, as well as there's a loose connection with the Proto-Indo-European word for hembane, which relates to Belenos' connection to oracular elements, which Brownos Comreton addresses in his article, Druids and Belenos, which I will post in the main chat if it allows me. Yes, it does. So you guys can see it. So, because I'm not going to really be getting into the oracle hembane elements myself. So I just want to get that added in there as well, but yes. So a big thing that kind of comes up in Neo-pagan context is that Belenos is viewed as the god of Beltane, the quote-unquote Celtic fire festival in the spring. It's through this that he gains pastoral and fire elements, as livestock would be driven between fires in order to ensure their health and prosperity. This has always been a bit perplexing to me. There's no evidence of Beltane in Gaulish areas. It would be on the colony, and as far as I know, it's not actually recorded there at all. And there's no evidence of Belenos worship in Gaelic areas. So my opinion is that they're not really connected. It's probably just more of a linguistic connection of like bright. So right here, range. So Belenos is a bit of an enigma when it comes to Gaulish deities, and a bit of an unknown in the modern community, despite how popular he was in the ancient Celtic world. Depending on which primary source you're researching, because this can be, scholars didn't really agree on the number because of something I'll get into in a second, but there is 54 inscriptions in one source, just in the specific Carno-Co-Norican region alone, which is kind of like Austria, Switzerland-ish, or 39 inscriptions across the whole of Western Europe, which is, in either case, whether the number might be, it's a significant amount more than any other individual Gaulish gods who typically have a handful of inscriptions. The reason of this variation across sources is likely the same as we tend to use the spelling Belenos with the double E-O-S, is because there's many dozens of partial inscriptions that have been found, and they've been kind of completed by the researching scholars to this version of the spelling of Belenos, despite the popularity of Belenos with an I-N-O-S in many intact inscriptions. So I have started putting together a cool map. I love Google Maps for this right here, and I'll share it with you guys right there, where it kind of designates a bunch of inscriptions, place names that relate to Belenos, and personal names tied to locations. It's still a work in progress, but it's super neat, and I'm gonna keep working on it as it goes. I just like the visual aspect of it. It's just kind of, it just looks good. I don't know. It's just very satisfying for me. So yes, let's look a little bit more into those name variations that I was talking about. So with so many inscriptions across a large period of time and geographical area, it makes sense for there to be multiple spellings. Main ones are Belenos, Belenus, Belenos, Belenus. You can see how it can be a little bit confusing to express those phonetically, so I've kind of written them out. An interesting thing is that the Belenus US always seems to be with Apollo Belenus as part of this Apollo syncretism. But in one specific region alone, Aquileia, which we'll get into, Belenus does appear by itself, but it's also very much assumed with Apollo syncretism because of the nature of the Gallo-Roman city. Sorry, I lost myself for a moment. Yes, okay, so the Belenos spelling, the INOS one, right, the third one you can see right there, the true main variation one. It's just one of the most concentrated areas of them, and assumed to be the origin of the cult is in the region of Noricum, which I was kind of talking about before, which is kind of like, Western Austria, part of Switzerland, that kind of area right there. I'll have a map in a bit, but it's the region where there was this Cisalpine Gaulish tribe called the Norci. I think that's the pronunciation, that developed into a kingdom with a rich Gallo-Roman culture significantly earlier than Central Gaul's Romanization to its close proximity to Rome proper. Viticus went a lot to the Romanization thing, so it kind of helps out with this part as well, because I'm not as strong as a presenter or an academic as he is. But let's look at Noricum right here. So we got a nice little map. It's a very interesting subject in of itself, Noricum. It was a center of manufacturing that later fed the Roman Empire, and was particularly known for its metalworking quality of its arms. Swords made of Noric steel were actually of legendary renown, and smiths would stamp their forged blade with a Latin inscription that confirms this. My personal take is that they're kind of like the Gaulish dwarves of the ancient world, because living on a mountain, really good with metalwork. It's just a fun thing to me. Next thing up is Aquileia. So Aquileia is talking about before. It's the second area known for its concentration of inscription of the Roman colony. It is the Roman colony of Aquileia, not far from Belenos' heartland among the north side, where he was embraced by the citizens of the city, where they were both of Gaulish and Roman origin. And he was known as Apollo Belenus, or simply Belenus, with the U spelling, EU spelling, yeah. They named him their national god, and he was written about extensively by several Roman authors. And in the year 238 Common Era, Roman soldiers have actually written to have said that they've witnessed Belenos appearing up from above in defense of the city, which is really interesting to think about, because this isn't something typically you associate with Gaulish gods, like appearing like that. It's something that is more uniquely Greco-Roman, but it's just, I think it's quite an interesting tidbit. And as a result of this had such a phenomenal impact on the citizens and the empire itself. There was the title Belino Defensori was created, and it was given to great defenders of the Roman Empire thereafter. So there are some Roman emperors who used that title. Pretty damn cool. So let's look at the syncretism a little bit before. So Aquileia is where the cult was pretty, came from Noricum, primarily Gaulish area, and, kind of had that syncretism between, Gallo and Roman. But it's not actually where the syncretism with Apollo began, because I would consider it to be the place of its resurgence more of, because if we actually look back at Noricum, there have been sanctuaries that have been, there was a sanctuary that was found where there was a large number of statues of the classical Apollo, along with statues of a lion skin figure with a leaf crown arranged like the rays of the sun. So even in an area where it wasn't necessarily like Gallo-Roman or heavily Romanized at that point, those local population of Gauls, they kind of saw the Greek and Roman Apollo and just like, hey, this reminds me of Belenos. And using that as association, and that's something that is they would give as offerings, just like those little cute little statues. So kind of leans into what Viticus was saying before, where the native people doing the syncretism themselves, and it wasn't necessarily like enforced on them. Which is and there's like the thing of the lion skin figure, which is no idea what that means, if it could, but it might have just been like just something a little bit separate. But it's an interesting thing because it combines a couple different elements that I wouldn't necessarily associate together. So let's look at the other associations, the solar associations, where if you Google Belenos, you typically see like this weird face thing, which I don't necessarily associate with Belenos at all. There are claims of Belenos as a solar deity, such as on Belenus's Wikipedia article, which is oddly, I went into like the names before, it's Belenus with a US. So, in EUS, so it's like, are they, just big fans of Aquileia? Or this, specifically to name the Wikipedia article that. But the distinction must be made between qualities of light or sunlight does not make a sun god. I prefer Encyclopedia Britannica's interpretation, where despite associations of his name with fire or the sun, Belenus was not a sun god. In fact, there is no Celtic evidence for the worship of the sun as such, even though it was often used in religious imagery. I mean, we do have Granus, who is more commonly associated with that of a sun god, but I just from what I've seen and from research, there's no direct attributions, and a lot of Belenos worshippers I've talked to, the association isn't generally made. It's like the sunlight is one thing, but the sun itself, the solar disk. I mean, you see that in like Egyptian mythology, where you would have the sun disk and like a god of light, sunlight would be separate. But I'm not a super purview to that, but just something to think about. So I want to look at next is the regional cults, because Belenos was such across a wide area. There's a little bit of diversification as a result of that. So I want to look at Massalia, our favorite Greek colony on the southern coast of Gaul. You have a great example of Gallo-Hellenic syncretism in this place, other than the tribes in Anatolia. But here we have a number of inscriptions suggesting that they favored the Belenus spelling with the I-N-U-S and worshipped him prolifically. So it's interesting in the way where it's like you see like in the more of the Gallo-Roman area, it was the Belenus with the B-E-L-E-N-U-S versus this Gallo-Greek area was a lot more of the B-E-L-I-N-U-S. It might just be like it's like that doesn't seem to be like that matter that much, but I kind of think of it in the sense of the different regions that worship him, what kind of Gaulish polytheist you are. You might want to take those historical cues and call upon them in ways where it would be accurate based on your syncretism. So I want to also look at Celtic Britain. So in Britain, there's an inscription to Apollo Belenus, which is another alteration of the spelling, which is B-E-L-L-I-N-U-S from the time of the Romans. But it's a bit more difficult to make the case for worship of Belenos in the area that predates Roman rule. By looking at several key factors, like the connection between the Belgic tribes on both sides of the channel, how their continental counterparts did have inscriptions found in their territory, as well as personal names that were connected to etymology, such as my namesake, Belenus, Rex, use the name of Rex. To me, it does feel like Belenus worship was very much there prior to the Romans kind of coming in and putting in their inscription. So we have the, Belenus Rex, but we do have, if you look at the image on the bottom of that inscription there, where it's where it was found on the Pierce Bridge in northern England, and they seem to think it's like a personal name, well as like a name of the god, so which would make a lot more sense, because it would typically you would see like, oh, to this god, but it was just like kind of scratched in the bottom, so it makes a lot more sense, like, writing your name on a desk or something. Take a quick drink. All right, let's keep moving on. So let's look at the feminine consort / counterpart. I'm just going to go into this very broadly because this is something that often comes up, but there is a feminine consort / variation called Belisama Belina. I believe there's another one associated as well. And she appears to have shared many or all qualities with Belenos himself. The name Belisama being associated with the river Ribble in Britain, the Tarn River in France, and often synced with the goddess Minerva. You see here I'm pretty sure this is the inscription that Sangomaros used to get his name, where it is dedicated in the sanctuary of Belisama. And something that is interesting to note, I believe Belina is the name that was tied as the consort to Belenos in the Nork area, but surprisingly, it never, like the feminine consort never really exited Noricum, and it because with the main Belenos cult, like in Aquileia, there's no kind of sign of that female consort there, which is unfortunate. It didn't really proliferate as well as the main cult of Belenos. And all right, so let's move on slightly from here, and I want to look at the possible Slavic connection as well. I mentioned that in the presentation description, so we're just going to dive into it just briefly, and I want to preface it by saying that I'm not a Slavic polytheist, and my knowledge of the tradition is relatively minimal. But what I'll be doing here is presenting some information and allowing room for speculation. So, sometimes around or just before or just after the fall of Rome, Slavic tribes began settling the territory of what is now modern Slovenia. Part of this territory was part of the former Noric kingdom, whereas the previously established cult of Belenos was extremely prevalent. In Slovenian folklore, we see the names of a single / multiple / multiple spirits / entities that pop up that do seem familiar. We have Belenes, Belen, and the Belisi of fairy lore. There's the note on my slide that says the Belobog fake lore. I've tried to talk to some Slavic polytheists about it. Belobog seems to be something they don't necessarily consider as part of the Reconstructionist tradition. But some of them, so some of these attestations are a little bit more shaky than others. But Belen in particular survived in this local folklore in Slovenia up until the 19th century. And he's known as a benevolent spirit that would guide people out of the woods and renowned as a powerful healer and bringing people wealth. And you also have Saint Belenus, which is interesting because it's the Belenus spelling of the I-N-U-S, similar to like the Gallo-Hellenic Belenus you would see in Massalia, and it was kind of added, like the saint thing was kind of added later on, Christianization. But the Saint Belenus would cure blindness with a magical key. And then there is that last point right there, which I will not try to pronounce. And he's described as a man with long legs, a small child's head, and a long white beard with a magical healing herb. So wild, just completely wild. I don't know if that is, typical description in Slavic folklore, but that's just wild. That's all I got to say. So yeah, so think about that. It's like, is that a continuation of the, the cult of Belenos in an area where, these Slavic tribes moved in and, met these people who were like very, very hardcore Belenos worshippers. Kind of makes sense. Kind of, I don't know, just can speculate on that. But moving on. Oh, well, first right here, yeah, there's the Mount Kern, Slovenia. That is like where the story of the last point, that word I will not try to pronounce, where there would be like a magical herb that grows there once every 7 years, and you would go up there the mountain to grab it. So it's a really wide reach, what we were looking at before. If we look at the aforementioned Belenos worship in the predominantly Gallo-Germanic Belgic areas, we can put together a broader picture that the worship of Belenos was immense and intense across a significant region of Western Europe, whose cult met and was accepted by Britons, Romans, Greeks, and Germanics alike, having a strong presence within strictly Gaulish nations and tribes as well. This is a god who vibed with many different cultures and across different social classes as well. I mean, I haven't mentioned the social classes before, so I'm going to get into that. See, if we go back to the Apollo Belenus in Aquileia, there are a lot of similarities to the Greco-Roman noble-run cults where the upper classes would engage in divination and worship, as inscriptions with Apollo Belenus never seem to have a worshiper with a Gaulish name. On the flip side, you can see the cult of Belenos was well received with the lower classes throughout the wider North Italic region, the area around Aquileia, because there's been inscriptions that have been found that have been a sort of like mixture of Latin and local dialects of Gaulish, which speaks to me as being more kind of, something they would find a little bit more of the less educated or the lower class. So that suggests to me that, this is, a deity that vibes with across the ranks of, the social class as well. Like you would see some deities that would necessarily only be worshipped by nobles and vice versa. So this is very interesting to me, combined with, how widely the range is. So let's look at a little bit of an overview right here. So we've established that Belenos is a healing Deuoi of light and water, because of the in that aforementioned Aquileia region, there was a lot of basins of water, and there was actually an inscription to Belenus, Apollo Belenos, on an altar to nymphs as well. So there's like an association in that to the Greek Roman nymphs, which is pretty cool, which kind of solidifies that connection to water. With the oracular elements, with the hembane part, and has wholeheartedly been accepted by followers of common priestly and ruling classes across the multitude of ancient European cultures. From here, I want to go into a bit of gnosis and expound on what we know and how it translates into modern worship. So being associated with healing hot springs alongside the light and warmth of the sun, I associate with Belenos with feelings of ease and relaxation that accompanies getting a warm bath or laying down in the afternoon sun or the rush after a workout. There was a lot of inscriptions that are found in especially in the Massalia region, where these inscriptions were found like very close to a body of water. There was one, Massalia itself, it's on the shore. There was one right next to a river. There was one that was in a swamp and next to a river. I don't know if the swamp had any significance to it, but they were still next to a river. He's very involved with life processes, filling the land with light and energy to heal and grow, which is why I associate him with the spring and the first tulips that sprout from lawns and gardens every April and May in my hometown of Montreal. Worship of Belenos can be fulfilling as he heals the mind and the soul and can help the worshiper feel more at ease and relaxed. But just like how sunlight must break through the canopy to nourish the earth, one must make sure there's nothing blocking that energy. And as far as the association with healing, I think I forgot to mention that before. There have been inscription that directly attest the connection of Belenos and health. So that's cool. So we are going to go into a little bit of a watering ritual, as that's the end of my presentation portion. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a small ritual which involves watering a houseplant, something simple. but it could just be worked as well with watering a garden or a field. To achieve this, I've used an adaptation of the Syncretism ritual format. We'll be sharing this format online when our website launches in the next few weeks. You're all welcome to participate. All you need is a houseplant, preferably one that is easy to carry, so you can bring it close to your computer, a candle, something to light it with, and a cup of water. So we'll take quickly 2 minutes. So if anyone wants to also get these things too, you can. And if anyone who wants to also get up and wash your hands and your face, you would before a ritual. And if you have any windows in your room, make sure there's no curtains or anything preventing sunlight from entering. So you have a window back there and make sure the sunlight gets in. So we'll quickly take 2 minutes. And if you guys want to do that, go ahead. I'm gonna go wash my face and my hands. All right, I've come back. I've purified myself for the ritual. I'll give it maybe like 30 more seconds for anyone else to come back. I have a nice little cute little bamboo plant, some elephants in the front, which I'll be watering. It doesn't need to be scented, but I have a scented candle. It is honey and tangerine. And I have a small cup, a little bit of distilled water in it. I just kind of left that out overnight, just so pretty sure that means it's better for plants. Okay. So we gather here on the 20th of November, the Comreton Calleios of Galatian. In the northern hemisphere, we approach the dark of Deuoi, a time of stillness and rest. Sunlight becomes choked and frail. The nourishment of the land must cease for a time. However, as humans, we must continuously stoke the flames and nourishment within ourselves at this time. This lack of light can cause us to shrivel and decay. We must come together and petition this shining one so we can be returned to life through water and light. So if you're falling at home, you can hold your water up as well. And I'll bless the water. May this water provide hydration and health. Connect us through this essence of the land, rising up from the underworld, just as it also comes from the heavens. And then I will be invoking Belenos by lighting the candles. It'll work. So it takes a second. Okay. So, Mulatus Belenos, life giver. Mulatus Belenos, joy bringer. Mulatus Belenos, Lord of motion and summers. You are the fire upon the water. It is through you we experience joy and friendship. So we ask that you be here and receive this gift of water. Down the candle. So I'm gonna water the plant just a little bit right here. If I overwater it, I'll just drain it out afterwards. It's not good to overwater your plants. Oh, a bit hard to see. Yes. There we go. It's nice so it doesn't fully cover the root. It covers the roots, but it doesn't go on the stem. Okay. With this offering of water, we humbly beseech you. As the days darken and the shadows grow long, we humbly ask for your blessing of light, health, and warmth. Guard us from the darkness that clings minds and souls. Defend us from the lethargy that binds body and hearts. We ask you on behalf of ourselves and those we hold dear. So we'll set aside the water in the plant. Take a couple deep breaths. Brantantai, Belenos, we thank you for your blessing. May you go in peace. And Brantantai to everyone here for sticking with me in this presentation and ritual. I know it kind of fell over a couple times with my pronunciation, but I appreciate you sticking with me. To stop the recording.